Alright, how we doing? Here is an example of how I go about modeling a house that, let's say, we found on Pinterest or some similar site that we would like to get a feel for maybe how our furniture would fit into the space, or whether we would actually like the flow of the space or something to that effect. This modeling is just a hobby for me, but I enjoy it. So over on the left, I'm going to go ahead and run through some of the plugins that I've got on the screen so that you can know what they are if you don't already, and describe a bit of the template that I use. So up here we've got Kirkathea, which is useful for animating your scenes once you try to put something together. And then the shadows and light. This is the location tool. Here is build, I think it's called stretch builder or something goofy like that. It enables you to like drag a line and that creates a wall, or drag a rectangle and that creates a framed building. This is joint push-pull. Gives you the ability to use push-pull in a lot of places where you couldn't with the standard tool. Here's the standard views and the styles. This is dynamic components. This is Shape Bender. This I originally downloaded because it let me write something in the 3D text and then bend it to a shape afterward. It was pretty cool. Anyway, this is Solid Inspector. Super useful if you are trying to 3D print something, because you have to have a solid item. It can't have any internal faces or stray edges and whatnot, or it'll screw up the slicer program. But it also comes in handy if you're trying to make sure that you your stuff is a solid, because that will assist in being able to use the reverse faces, or being able to use orient faces instead of reverse faces. If the program doesn't know what is out and what's inside, and then it can't reverse the faces properly on its own. This is the 3D Warehouse, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with. You can download a lot of good models from there. Also a lot of crappy ones, probably. This gives you the ability to position the sun in your model so that you can have more control over how the light is, whatever. This is Round Corner, and it gives you the ability to do round corners and chamfers. I'm not entirely sure what this sharp corners is. Maybe we'll get into that later. Curvaloft allows you to do all kinds of cool stuff for complex shapes. Fredo 6 is a collection of tools from Fredo, and then this SketchUp clock I use if I'm trying to track how much time I've spent on a project. That just gives you a little clock that tracks how much time you've been in the program, and so on. This is Twilight Render. I was using Visualizer for SketchUp, but it doesn't work with SketchUp 2017. So I'm now trying to see how Twilight Render works. I've not used it yet at all. So then over here is Soapskin. It gives you the ability to kind of inflate or deflate some things. So I was using it to give that sag in between the support structure of a tent, if that gives you any idea of what it's used for. Over here we've got the the regular large tool set, and then across the top I've got quite a few scenes that I have defaulted in my template that are based on an idea out of the SketchUp Workflow for Architecture book. I had a little trouble getting the layers to save in the template. Every once in a while they would just disappear in between things, so I now have 2 people in here instead of 1. As you can see, this is group after group of nested fun, which is also that I could put each of these groups on a different layer. As you can see, let me go ahead and pin this up. As I click out of each one, each one's in a different layer. That way it ensured that all the layers were in the model and therefore they wouldn't go away. I couldn't nest one guy deep enough to use all of the layers that are recommended by the SketchUp Workflow for Architecture, so I added 2 guys. This guy is also nested pretty deep, but you get the picture. Alright, anyway, up here you'll also see that there are quite a few scenes. I think I mentioned them before, but I didn't mention what they were for. Some of them I haven't really gotten used to using yet. This is still fairly new to me as well. The 2 that I have been using the most often is the 90-degree versus 45-degree axis. If I'm drawing in the regular 90-degree view and there's a room, you'll see on this this floor plan that we're getting ready to work on, if there's a room that is offset by 45 degrees, I can toggle these 2 scenes to change the axes, and then it'll be easier to draw in that 45-degree angled room. You can, in addition to the 45 and 90, you could put in any alternate axial setup. I don't know what the word is, but you could put in any alternate axis rotation so that you can flip-flop back and forth while you're drawing a project that has a lot of things in 2 different rotations. It'll make more sense when I get to the garage on the project that we're getting ready to start. So then these over here turn on and off certain well, I guess I could look in the scenes thing here and show you what I'm talking about. These turn on and off certain aspects. Come on, the info. There we go. So in the default, it has saved everything. It's not included in the animation though. This only affects what layers are visible, but it turns all of them on. This only affects what layers are visible, and it turns all of them off. This is the all off is pretty useful for finding anything that is still in layer 0, because you can't make layer 0 invisible or not visible, whatever you want to call it. This is an interior layer for or it's an interior scene that brings up all those items that are on the interior layer, and then here is the exterior scene, which has the same effect but for the exterior. This is for the site plan. This is the design scene, which turns style and fog off and shadows off, and active section planes, I believe it turns off as well, so that you can go back to moving around and modeling without having a bunch of stuff that's eating up your processor, so it slows everything down. This is 3D perspective. which changes to I'm not entirely sure what that one does yet. These are all from the template that I downloaded with regard to a project from the SketchUp workflow for architecture. Scope, I believe, is the one that shows where you're trying to do stuff. I don't know. Anyway, axis check will highlight the all the lines in the model to show which axis they are aligned with, or if they're not aligned with any. They colors lines based on which one they're aligned with. If they're not aligned with a red, green, or blue axis, then they get colored black, I believe. Orient faces shows the inside face and the outside face is different than the normal white and blue colors. Makes it a bit more obvious. I think they used red and green on here. Then these are the 45 and 50 that we talked about. Overview is another everything, and it's kind of a pulled back, almost an ISO view, but not in parallel projection. Then these CL sheets 1 through 7 was actually, I use this a lot for woodworking, so I can add the cut list sheet layouts to CL sheet 1 through 7, and then when I export to layout, then it makes it easier to grab those scenes to show what I need to cut and do the dimensioning for them in layout instead of in SketchUp. That's all that I've got in my template, besides the which trays I have and which ones I use and so on. I almost always keep entity info open inside the collapsed tray. The 6 main things that I use is outliner and entity info. Entity info almost always stays open. Materials, layers, components, and scenes. Very rarely do I end up doing anything with scenes until it's almost time to export the project. Layers I use a lot to try to declutter while I'm in the middle of a project, or in the middle of a model in a project. The materials, obviously that's toward the end as well, but the outliner becomes very helpful, especially when you're trying to create dynamic components. It makes it easy to get in and out of the pieces that you need to animate / change size of, whatever. So usually I leave this collapsed, and then the default tray is the other options that you can include that I very rarely use, and so it just kind of sits there. I am, on the other hand, getting into styles more. It seems that I've been missing a lot with the styles and what it has to offer in the past. So that I usually keep closed. Alright, so the first thing nearly everyone does, I think, is delete the guy. In this case, we've got 2 guys. Then, since we're going to be working mostly in the 2D plane, I will kind of orient this a bit so that when we come and import our drawings, we will know where we're going. So, to import a floor plan, it needs to be in one of these file types: BMP, JPG, PNG, PSD, which I don't know what that is, TIFF, and TGA, and I don't know what TGA is. When I downloaded these floor plans from the website that we got them from, somewhere reference from Pinterest, I'll put a link in the description below. they were GIFs, and so I had to come in here and edit and then resave them as PNGs. I could have used JPG or whatever, doesn't really matter. So I'll just make this a size that I can kind of see from here, and then we will go ahead and import all of the floor plans at the same time. I will start this guy right here and make him the same size. Now, since we imported them at the same size, they should also, if we were to lay one on top of the other, they should line up fairly well, which they appear to. Alright, the reason we imported the second one now is so when I come in and resize the model, both of them get sized the same, and therefore they stay matching each other. So to resize the model, when all you have in here is the stuff that you will be making all your size decisions from, you use the tape measure tool. T is the standard shortcut for that. You have to uncheck control to get rid of the little plus sign underneath it. The plus sign attached to the little line there is actually a construction line indicator. Line this up with a wall that you know the length of. This wall here should be 9'6". At the current size, it's only 4'9". Once you're done, before you do anything else, go ahead and type in on the keyboard 9'6", and you can do inches. It's not necessary. You can look down here in the bottom right hand corner and see what you've typed in. When you hit enter, I think I may have taken too long. Value to resize the model. 9'6", enter. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but it'll ask if we want to resize the model. So we're going to say yes. That will resize everything in the model, so that now if I take a measurement with the tape measure tool on this down to here, we get 9'6". So now all of these rooms, once we draw them in and push pull and so on, should end up being their actual size in real life, which will come in handy when we are trying to figure out where stuff should go if we were to be moving into this house or whatever. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer and call it second floor, and I'm going to put this item on that second floor layer, and then I'm going to make the second floor layer invisible for now. That way he's out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and put this guy on the first floor layer, just so we can go ahead and have him there and have that layer created. I like to always model in layer 0. I'm not entirely sure how layer 1 got added on, but I need to remove him from my template, apparently. Okay. Alright, so first thing I do once I've got the stuff in here is to scroll on down, and with the rectangle tool just kind of line him up in a corner. I usually prefer to work from like top left to bottom right, or something to that effect. Just go in and draw the first square. I like to then switch into X-ray view. That way I can still see the plan underneath. And all I'm going to do is continue to reference off of the last corner that I drew and just draw all the rooms in that I can. As close to the plan lines as I can. Since I had a reference that I could make off of there, I don't know that it was really necessary, but at least I know that something worked well. I went ahead and selected this line. Now I can drag this over to be even with that wall, and then we'll go back to the rectangle tool and continue on. I want to make sure that as many of the corners as I can get referenced off of the respective corners. This way, this makes sure that this is a through wall because this lines up with this. Same with down here. I'm going to reference off of here to make sure that all of these are a common distance. I'm going to actually reference off of that edge entirely so that we know that they connected and there's not some weird overlap or something. Then over here, that same kind of situation, but this time we've got this to reference off of and then this. So that way we know that these two walls share a common, these two walls share a common, and so do these two walls. Just kind of keeps everything nice and square and straight in my mind. So we're going to come over here and start another. This again will be a reference off of two corners. Once you have a square being drawn on the right plane, you can hold down Shift, and that's where that magenta, I guess that's magenta, I don't know, pink square comes in. That's to say that it is now constrained to this plane. Okay. And then the next guy, again, just keep referencing as often as you can. Once you've got two corners referenced, you can go ahead and hit that magenta shift button, and that will lock in those two references, and then you can grab your third reference like I did from this bottom corner here. That makes sure that this, and this are all lined up with its counterparts. Now we've ensured that this entire bottom wall here and this entire top wall all share a side, or whatever you want to call it. Okay. And then we're going to drag this guy down till he meets with this hallway wall down here. Then instead of referencing off of, I'm just going to go ahead and start at that corner. Click this guy in. You may have noticed that I'm not putting any doorways in yet. That in my workflow comes later. We'll now start back in the corner here. Sometimes the farther away you get from what you're trying to reference off of, the easier it'll be to determine what plane you're in or what direction you're dragging in. So like here to here is easily in the red direction, but here to here ends up being in the blue direction. If I drag here instead, you can kind of see the green line show up. So I like to drag out far enough to get the correct reference, and then I think this is actually supposed to be common with that, which it looks like it very well could be. Alright. Okay, so we have gotten that far so far. Now this, in my mind, appears attached there. I'll line up those two sides and then just draw in this little triangle here. And erase. Back to the rectangle tool. I'm going to come back and do these 4 rooms here, because we'll need the 45 degree and I don't want to flip back and forth too many times for that. But I will get as many of the 90 degree references as I can first. So that I can put in okay, now that I've got that in, I can go ahead and start referencing off the bottom here. And then draw an extension right here. I'm going to go ahead and say that probably should be referenced off of that. Alright, then I can go ahead and draw this in as well. And then on up into here. The rest of that should be drawn in once we've got the 45 degree pulled up, and this upper corner here we'll get here in just a minute. Alright, so then I would come back over here and continue on. And then from here down into this corner, go ahead and make this all one hallway. Sometimes I'll reference like so, get it to the right size in one sense, and then drag into place, and then add to. So that appears to be the correct and then we'll come back later and fill in the rest of that as well. Actually, we might as well do it now. So if I go ahead and hit the 45-degree scene, you see the line jumped in to the middle of the scene. Now, if I reference off of this, I can draw a 45-degree rectangle and start referencing off of it instead of the funkiness that would ensue if I tried to continue on with using the 90-degree rectangles. So back to the rectangle tool. As you can see, the references work exactly the same. They just show up just a tad differently and make everything that much easier. Alright, and then we can reference up through here as well. Reference off of this guy. Go ahead and get that guy. Now these two have crossed, and we can erase the internal geometry. Now we've got to do some garage. So for this is where I might reference off of here anyway, even though that's not where the corner ends. Just so I can know I'm starting in a good place. Sometimes the little tooltips really get in the way. Okay, and then since I referenced properly on that, I can go ahead and double reference off of there, and then just drag this into the corner. And then I can start this right on the edge and drag him up to this opposite corner, and then use my eraser tool to get rid of that good stuff. And then switch back. Oh wait, let's go ahead and get the bathroom while we're on the 45. I will reference off of this bottom corner here in the red direction, holding shift in the corner, and then go ahead and drag up until these two sides line up where I want them, but make sure that I'm referencing on this line here. So you're going to drag up and down until these two sides land in the two corners they need. And then because you lined up this side, all you have to do is use the line tool and reference off of the line itself. If it wasn't already on the red axis, you would get a perpendicular or parallel reference by referencing off the line itself. And then hold down shift, which you can see by the darker line there, and reference off of the edge you're connecting to. That makes sure you don't have any stray edges that are protruding, like a little tiny edge past where it ended there. That makes sure that this is all one thing without extra stuff that'll mess it up when you go to making sure it's a solid later on. Alright, switching back to 90 to put in this piece of the garage right here. Back to the rectangle tool and reference off of the hallway end, because this appears to be a common wall. This guy is going to get drugged down, and like the other one, we're going to reference this edge here but making sure that we stay on the edge. And then all that we need to do is reference, there's that magenta reference that we were talking about earlier, right here. And then erase these 3 lines. And while I'm in here, I see that we've got a little bit of a funny thing here that is now in line with the rest, and we don't have any little extra faces. At least not that one anymore. Alright, back over here to the foyer reference off the top. I'm going to go ahead and line up this wall and drag down to here. Yes. The way I understand this is that these are columns with some kind of a beam overhead, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to go ahead and, instead of referencing, go ahead and draw off this edge here, and we're going to go all the way up into this corner. We're able to cover a lot of ground all at once. Alright, and that leaves this bump out here. So we'll go ahead and reference there, or start there, I guess I should say. And go off those walls. Now we'll start here and box out this piece here. And then I actually want to go ahead and draw that in and reference off of here. That in, and draw this internal and reference. Alright, so then I'm going to come back through and erase all the lines that are inside the walls and all the lines that are inside the rooms. And then we've got to extend this guy over into the corner some more. And I want to lock that reference and then reference to the other end of this wall. So that's one common side right there. This dining hutch needs to get moved as well, and it appears that it's doesn't look like we've got anything else to reference off of, so I'm just going to start it here in the corner. And it looks to be good. We're going to then reference off of that back wall because it appears the same size. And that appears to be the right place. While we're over here, we'll go ahead and do this storage. Looks like this is a common reference right here. And we'll draw him in. And then I'm going to go ahead and finish up the breakfast room, or the breakfast and kitchen area. Go ahead and draw this guy as far up as this corner. We're going to have to remove a little bit over in the corner over here for this wall. Do we have a common? Well, we will, but not yet. So I'm going to establish it right now. So then this can go away. That can go away. We want to start with that in mind. Alright. And then we'll reference off of here. And then lock so we can reference off of there. We'll go ahead and remove that line there. Now, we've got to draw in these walls here, so we'll do that with 2 rectangles. We'll do one for the inside, and then we'll do one for the outside. And then, because I've messed around with this before, by the way, that was the protractor, which I have saved as a shortcut. Shift T seems to work well for me, but you can make your shortcuts whatever you like. Go ahead and put the protractor here. I know that this is about 52, 53 degrees. I don't know why that's not a 45, but whatever. So I'll go ahead and draw a construction line there, and then switch to the tape measure and pull one parallel to that over here. That way when I draw these lines in, we're good to go. So this is the inside of the room, so it goes inside to inside. This is the outside of the room, so it goes outside to outside. Then we're going to delete all internal and external faces. Then down here is also a connection that was not necessary. Alright, looks like we're on to bedrooms 2 and 3 over here. So, doesn't look like we have anything in particular that we need to start with, so I'll reference this and go ahead and start him about here. Yep, that's fine. And draw this up into the corner so we can work back from here. Then from that same starting point, I want to make sure that he's correct there and there, and delete this internal. And then we've got another little rectangle to add on right here. So there's that. Alright. Now, looks like the inside of this wall is equal to the outside of that wall. So we'll start there. Does the same go down here? Yep, that's that there. And then there's nothing yet to reference this off of. There's that closet. Then the top of this and the top of that are obviously the same as well. And it looks like this takes up this whole piece here. And then from here we want to reference down into the linen closet.